Good evening, good evening, everyone, and welcome to the Angry Church Lady podcast. It is me, the Angry Church Lady, and I'm here to talk real good to you on this evening. So let's go on today. I want to talk about symbolism versus symbolism versus meaningful change, symbolism versus actual policy that is going to be effective for change. So I think it was yesterday, everybody is, talking about the murder of Mr. George Floyd and how just demonic and sick what happened was. And, it literally is like the whole world is in an uproar and everybody eye is on, talking about making changes, talking about how it was awful, just a lot of things that everybody is talking about right now, and rightfully so. And so on yesterday, of course, our Congress, the United States Congress, wanted to get in on the symbolism of what's going on, and they took a bow in the House of Congress, and they did it for 8 minutes and 47 seconds, which represents the time that police officer stood on the neck of Mr. Floyd. And, when I initially saw the gesture, it warmed my heart. Now, hear me out before I get in trouble for being a softie. Initially, it did warm my heart to see that Congress was standing in solidarity with what was going on around the world, and that I could almost say, like finally, as African Americans, our voice is being heard, and it's not just being heard, in a small setting, but it is being heard in a global sense. And there was a sense of pride that I took when I saw that. I was really excited about it, but as I started thinking about it more, I got a little indignant. I was almost offended. And I'm going to tell you why. I was, first of all, they were adorned in these kente kind of wraps that went around their shoulder. And so when I began to look at that, I guess I was trying to figure out what was the point of that. What was the point of donning yourself in kente cloth? First and foremost, we are African Americans. I can say for me, and maybe someone may get offended when you hear this, I've never been to the continent of Africa. I know that there is an ancestry connection that I have, but I don't wear kente cloth. I don't. So to me, I felt like it was a bit of a mockery, and it kind of brought back that kind of hurt that a lot of foundational Black Americans feel, that many times we are literally celebrated as an afterthought, or we're thought about as an afterthought. To me, I felt like them putting that kente cloth on was almost like they were saying that the focus was on non-foundational Black Americans. Now, this is no slight to them, because I know we're all in this fight together. But at the end of the day, it's almost like that minority bogus thing that they talk about. It's almost like that Black and brown coalition that they talk about. The Black and browns are not being killed at a absorbent rate. The Blacks are, not the browns, not any other color, just the Blacks. And so for them to put that cloth on, I'm assuming as a represent the African culture. it was a little bit insulting to me. It was a little bit insulting to me because at the end of the day, for many African Americans, that's not who we are. That's not who we represent. And the reality is our ancestry, our current ancestry is not linked to that as it pertains to kente cloth. Not that I've never worn it, not that I don't like it, not that if I don't think that that representation, it's absolutely beautiful. But at the same time, again, I was really taken back. It really rubbed me the wrong way, and I have to be honest, it really did rub me the wrong way. The second reason that it rubbed me the wrong way was because I began to think about, they went down, they were as they were kneeling, they were talking about others who have been victims of the police brutality. They went down just a plethora of names of African American men and women who had been, their life had been snuffed away from them. Their life had been taken away from them because of the brutality of these the police departments, the race soldiers. Now, I'm gonna preface it very different because you do have, like people say, there are good police officers, and I do believe that there are some police officers who have a moral compass, and but I also do believe that they all stand by a code, and so I'm half and half in that respect. But they just went down a list of names as to who was impacted by the brutality of the race soldiers, and all of those names were African American men or women. And so once again, it's a slap in the face, because my question remains at this point: why did it take that many Black men and women to die for you all to recognize that policy needed to be changed? Why did it take for people to be killed and slaughtered? And in many of the states, Blacks are treated like animals by these race soldiers and by the departments that cover for these race soldiers. Why in the world did it have to take this long for these people to get the recognition that they need, for these people's lives to be counted as valid? The more I think about it now, the more outraged I'm becoming, because why, when this happened to, what was the young man's name? Bell, was it? I can't remember his first name, but this was years ago when that young man he was killed by a race soldier. Why didn't we think about this? The young man who, they even made a movie about him, and he was on the train and he was killed. Fruitville Station, that movie was made about him. Why weren't we concerned? Why wasn't this a concern then? Why wasn't this a concern when that young man who in New York, who had ended up being in Rikers Island as a child for 3 years? For 3 years, that baby was held in a jail, and he wasn't a little baby, but I'm saying from the perspective of looking for a mother and your child being held in a literally an abusive place. I can imagine the mental, the emotional, and the physical trauma that was inflicted upon that child, because he was a child. He was a child. I'm going to say that again. He was a child. And for anyone who's listening who would even fix your face to say, oh, well, he deserved it, he was a child. And so when your child acts up at your house, you let me know the type of corporal punishment you serve upon them. Is it putting them in prison for 3 years for a crime that they did not commit? Having them abused by other men, having them, or they're abused by the guards. I mean, they abused that young man to the point that when he finally got his freedom, he took his own life, because the trauma that he experienced was so great, he could not mentally handle it. And so we can say very easily, well, you don't know, I don't have to know. Well, I do know that I don't know a lot of non-melanated people who get treated as inhumane as melanated people. That's what I do know. And so we can say all day and all night what we deserve. But I want every non-melanated person that is under the sound of my voice today to think about some of the things that your son has done, some of the things that your daughter has done. I want you to think about your son who's on methamphetamines right now, your daughter who's on drugs and popping pills and stealing drugs from her doctor and stealing drugs out of your medicine cabinet. Do you think that her or his punishment should be being abused by prison guards? Or do you think their punishment should be being abused and put in jail for no just cause? You know, the whole thing really, really rubbed me the wrong way, because and the third thing that upset me about it is the fact that many times our emotions are placated upon, because many who are outside of the our non-foundational Americans or non-blacks, they know even though they attempt to call us barbarians or whatever they attempt to call us, but they'll call you all of these names and say you exemplify all of these demonic and animalistic behaviors, but we are the most empathetic people on the planet. How do I know? I know because that is what our Achilles heel is, that every time they placate on our emotions by giving us symbolism, we get all worked up. I was thinking today about Bill Clinton and how many black people said, oh, he was the first black president. How was he the first black president? Why? Because he played a saxophone. But this was the president that enacted law that imprisoned so many of our black men improperly. This was the same man that said that the crack being on crack, you were obligated to get more time in jail for being on crack than you would be, sniffing coke. And so he imprisoned the people, the crack dealers, at almost 10 to 20 times higher rate and longer time. There are people right now who are still in prison for non-violent offenses. Come on. Still people in jail right now to this day who have been accused of non-violent offenses. And because of the laws that this quote unquote first black president enacted. Now, I don't know about anybody else, but if you say that frightens me. The thought that we within ourselves as a community, black Americans, we would say or give credence to this foolishness that he is our first black president, when he is one of the main reasons many of us still have to go down to the prison and visit our family. Many of us have to put money on the books of our family who we haven't seen in 15, 20 years. Why? Because they were selling crack cocaine. But little Johnny or Chad, who was selling a little cocaine or sniffing a little cocaine in his high school days or in his college days, he's gone on to be a lawyer. He's gone on to be in college right now. So that whole thing of how they are playing that symbolism against us, because they know how we are. They know that symbolism grabs the empathy in our hearts. And so we as black Americans, the first thing we'll do, oh, that was so nice. But I want to charge everybody that's listening to me, don't get caught up in that foolishness, because that's what it is. It's foolishness. Don't get caught up. Either they're going to be policy changes not for minorities, not just for minorities, not policy changes for humpbacks, not policy changes for whales, not policy changes for minorities, not policy changes for the black and brown coalition, but policy changes specific to black Americans, specific to black people. Because let me tell you something, that's how they're going to get you. They've given you all of this symbolism, and then they're going to lull you to sleep by telling you, oh, all you need to do is vote and everything's going to be okay. Can I say this? And I know this is a different conversation, but we done been voting all these many years and we still in the same position. I just want every voter to think about me right now. Now, I'm not saying that I am against voting. I believe in the demonic, the democratic system, and that it should work for us. But listen, I also believe that we should have common sense, and it is not working for us. So what is it that we need to do? Maybe we need to get out of our feelings and start placing some demands. Maybe we need to get out of our feelings and out of any type of symbolism that we can get pulled into and make the decision that this is what we want, this is what we need, and no, we're not going to share it anymore. We're not going to share it with the LGBT community. We're not going to share it with the feminism community. We're not going to share it with the non-Black community because they have their own initiatives. And I know I'm telling the truth. Now, anybody that's a part of that community, I'm not here to bash you. I'm not here to talk down on you. But let me tell you something. Black Americans have stood up for everybody except themselves. Black Americans have been advocates for everyone on the planet except themselves. It is time for Black Americans to say, it is our time. We're going to get what we need, and we'll come back at a later date to pick you up again. But right now, we cannot worry about everybody else. This boat ride is just for us, and then be okay with it and not get caught up in the foolishness of what they're trying to sell us. So that is just my thought on today. I don't want us to get caught up in symbolism. We need to be looking for change. We need to be looking for policy changes. We need to be demanding policy changes, not just getting caught up in, oh, they did a nice gesture. Gestures are not what is not what's going to change laws. Them enacting policies are what's going to change laws. So I would say, listen, let your vote speak for you, but don't vote if it's not beneficial for you. Put something on your vote. Put a demand on your vote. I'll give you this if you give me this. I think it's called quid pro quo. If you give me something, I'll give you something. We need to begin to operate in that mentality on a regular basis. Well, that's my time on tonight. Listen, this has been the Angry Church Lady, and I'm signing off. You all have a great, great, great evening. Stay strong, stay blessed, stay smart. I'll talk to you later.